told us we could have put on some ballroom.
You could have, you know.
We could have got you a partner and done a little swing.
I tried to get a partner.
We could have got Tammy to come up and dance.
I did try.
You know, we could have done it.
Honor and pleasure to be here. So great to see everyone.
No, man, thanks for taking the time. I know you're running a small little company down the street, so appreciate you taking a little time.
Exactly.
So on that, a couple of things. What keeps you going? What keeps Niccolo going? What keeps you going day to day?
So I'm a physicist originally, and I caught the quantum computing bug actually reading Dr. Chris Monroe's paper in '95 when he was working at the University of Maryland early on. And it's a paper that, how many physicists are in the audience? Mathematicians? Computer scientists? Everybody know the paper I'm referring to? Bell inequality violations.
It's a high
95,
read.
98.
Yeah. I can read it.
So if you were a physicist, and I was an undergrad at the time, and you heard about this paper, it was like a lightning rod, you know, if you will, through the community because it demonstrated the first sort of empirical proof of what Dr. Richard Feynman wrote out in the early 1970s. These crazy ideas that you could have a quantum computer and a completely secure quantum network. Mm-hmm. And so believe it or not, I finished university. I don't have a PhD in physics. I bailed out at the master's degree. And unfortunately, I'm not a TERP. I went to Cambridge University, but if I had been in the U.S. at the time, it would have been here. It would have been here for sure.
There you go. I'm sure Dr. Pines will get you, you know, he can get you a couple credits.
At this point, I'm hoping for that honorary doctorate.
There you go.
We'll see. We'll see. And so I sort of said to myself, you know, hey, this quantum computing stuff might take a little while to percolate. But I really believed throughout my career that the 2020s was going to be when quantum computing became, a prime time event. And so, believe it or not, you know, I had this is my 14th public company that I've been the chairman or CEO, lead director of. I've worked in a few industries, but I've always kept an eye on the development of quantum computing, and a lot of my friends from university stayed in academia in this sector. And so I am delighted by the fact that when we got into the late teens, let's call it, of the 21st century, things really started to accelerate. I took IonQ public with my blank check company, or SPAC, in 2020. And I'm not going to say the rest is history, but certainly that was a catalyzing moment of capital formation because we delivered $645 million to Dr. Monroe's private startup that at the time only had about 35 people.
So a lot there we're going to unpack, but I want to, as you heard, I'm an engineer by training, engineer computer science by training. And I consider myself a Marvel, Star Trek kind of guy. A nerd, because my wife likes to call me a nerd. I'm a nerd. So, you know, quantum is in all the comics and all the movies, and everybody wants to talk about quantum. But explain quantum as if we got a bunch of second graders in here so people can really understand what the heck this thing, quantum really is, and not what the movies tell us, but what quantum, and by the way, what IonQ is doing to bring quantum to life.
Yeah, so to some extent, this is a revolutionary technology that you don't actually have to understand the technical details of any more than you have to understand what happened with CPUs when Intel was king of the world in the 80s and 90s, and right now with NVIDIA and GPUs. Quantum, the business of quantum is what IonQ is in. And whilst we were started as a quantum computing only company, and that is the core business, as President Pines aptly pointed out, we have expanded the vision dramatically. So we are the leading quantum computing company, we're the leading quantum networking and security company, we're also the leading quantum sensing company. And the last year we've expanded the vision sufficiently that we can do all of those business lines or product families both on the ground and up in space because we also own a satellite signals platform.
Wow.
Each of those is a slightly different application of quantum. And I'm not going to spend time talking about really what quantum means in theory. What it means in practice is we are building the future of what we call the quantum internet. And so if you think about the last, 100 years of history, you know, we had, of course, the Enlightenment and the Renaissance and the Age of Information then happened in the 20th century, and we had an agricultural revolution. I think the 21st century is the quantum renaissance, the quantum revolution, And what's going to happen slowly but surely, or quickly but surely in a lot of places, is that you're going to move from this classical world to a fully quantum one where our quantum sensors are able to capture information and we're able to transmit that information using our quantum networks in an entangled state securely, and we're able to then process that information on our quantum computers. And so quantum will become an ever bigger feature of everyone's life. It is happening right now in the background in every single vertical of applied science. I always like to jokingly say that the reason why quantum computing isn't in the popular zeitgeist to the same extent that, say, ChatGPT is because you can't use our quantum computers, or at least we don't focus on using our quantum computers to cheat on your homework, right? So we don't focus on cheating your homework, and we don't focus on banner ads, right? And the reality is classical AI is fantastic at monetizing all of us as a person, as a product. And that's not what we're focused on at IonQ. We're focused on revolutionizing every area of applied science, from pharmaceutical to defense to logistics to ultimately material science, sustainability. We are very much a nerdy company. I mean, goodness, we have 1,100 people, and half of them have advanced degrees, and half of them have advanced degrees in the physics, math, and related material science engineering, if you will, that we need to make these products.
So I want to double click on a couple of words that you said in there. You said entanglement. What the heck is entanglement?
Yeah, so here's what I'll say on entanglement. What makes building quantum stuff hard is this concept of entanglement, which allows incredible power to happen if you can maintain it. Entanglement is this superposition concept that some of you will have read about in high school physics classes or undergraduate physics classes if you were taking them or forced to take them, depending on what your perspective is. And that entanglement allows a couple things, right? So Richard Feynman pointed out 50 years ago that it would allow incredible computational power if we could perform a bunch of calculations in parallel as opposed to in series. And that's the basis of quantum computing. We can do a bunch of stuff at the same time with every one of our qubits as opposed to doing it in series. The other thing entanglement does is it allows you to transmit information knowing whether or not somebody is interfering with that transmission of information. Mm-hmm. And so it allows perfect security. And we've known this in theory for 50 years, but IonQ has been doing this for the better part of a decade at this point from a quantum networking and quantum security perspective. And so we offer the only cybersecurity networks and solutions in the world where it's not just practically difficult to crack and pretty secure, but it's actually completely theoretically secure. The laws of quantum mechanics tell you that if you play around with information transmission on a quantum network, we absolutely can tell, absolutely now, and we'll be able to tell even in 50 years. And so the future of cybersecurity also runs through quantum key distribution and quantum networks and IonQ's infrastructure.
So you mentioned qubits. The heck is a qubit?
Yeah, so it's the unit of computation. A qubit is unit of computation for a quantum computer. We had bits, of course, for classical computers. Qubits, great piece of marketing and branding that I think Richard Feynman also came up with. It's been known for 30, 40, 50 years. But it's that entangled, perfect physical state, which for us, we do with ions, which we use lasers to manipulate and perform calculations on. Mm-hmm.
So you mentioned ChatGPT, the retelling of the fact that when will, or do you see a time when quantum will be in that retelling everyday life, and what does that look like?
So IonQ is the biggest company in the world, actually, in the quantum business, period. President Pines did a better job than I usually can in introducing our company. And I think the only fact that he admitted was actually that. no matter how you want to measure it, IonQ is the biggest company in the sector by revenue, by market cap, by balance sheet. We raised $3.4 billion this year in the public markets, by employees, by patents. We're very, very proud of this. And the journey we've been on is 30 years in the making, right? So Chris Monroe started in 95. We went public in 2020. We were on the public clouds, Amazon, Google, Microsoft public clouds at our IPO, and we're very proud of that. Believe it or not, there are people that compete with IonQ, or say they do, and their machine has neither turned on, which ours did in 2017, nor was it on the public Amazon, Google, Microsoft clouds. And that's a sign of not only commercialization, and as you put it, just general mass market actualization, but it's a sign of how robust our technology machines are. On a go-forward basis, at our IPO, what I said to most of our investors was, it's 2020. Let's remember what I believe Einstein said, which was, we always overestimate what happens in a year and underestimate what happens in a decade. And quantum computing has been and is bang on that trajectory. If I look back 5 years ago, quantum computing 5 years ago was, it was a relatively esoteric field that a few people had heard of. 5 years on, everyone has heard of it. Everyone now recognizes they have to have a strategy. Yeah. And so my belief is time is taking care of itself, Troy. So, you scroll forward 5 quarters, you scroll forward certainly 5 years. This is actually becoming a mass market event right in front of our eyes. Right. People just don't realize the qubit clock ticks every month. I mean, this year, IonQ demonstrated quantum advantage 3 times. We did it with ANSYS and computational engineering in March. We did it with AstraZeneca and NVIDIA and Amazon Web Services on June 9th for a fantastic 20x speed up in computational drug design. And we did it in April, World Quantum Day. We were at the NYSE with a generative adversarial network that we could actually speed up the learning on. And that's a watershed moment, as is our announcement this morning about having 4 nines of fidelity on a 2-qubit gate fidelity of our machine. Wow. And the 4 nines is important because IonQ has held all the fidelity records in our sector for basically our existence, decade after decade. But this particular milestone means that we will build those fault-tolerant machines President Pines mentioned in the coming years without any scientific, let's just call it hurdles that we have to surmount.
And for the non-engineers, it's 99.99 for the 4 nines. That's outstanding. Congratulations. So we're at the TEDCO Entrepreneur Expo. So and you heard me ask the entrepreneurs, innovators to stand up. As you just mentioned, you're still on this kind of 20-year, 30-year journey as an entrepreneurial company, as a startup, if you will. It's a multi-billion-dollar startup, but still, startup. What do you want to talk to? If you could just talk to these folks who are here, these entrepreneurs, these innovators, what are 2 to 3 lessons you'd want them to know about this journey that you still are on that they need to hear?
So I very much think of myself as a public company entrepreneur, always have. We are still a modest growth stage business compared to where we think we can get to in the next 3 to 5 years. We very much want to be the first $100 billion market capitalization quantum company. And, I hope during my career at IonQ, we will become a $1 trillion company is certainly the longer-term aspiration. And, all the ingredients are there. I always tell our team that, there's a $100 billion quantum computing business to be had. But because we are the only company in the world that can do computing, networking, sensing, security on the ground and in space, there is that $1 trillion potential if we can stitch it all together properly, because we can provide these ecosystems and these solutions that nobody else in the world can do in an era when everyone is thinking about sovereign systems that they control, whether or not you're a state, a nation state, or even a large company. Mm-hmm. People now are thinking a lot about, I want that machine in my basement. I want that quantum network protecting my data center. I want my ability to actually capture data and control it in an entangled state across my network. I'm always learning, right? And some of my most important learnings, in the last 25 years of being a public company entrepreneur are you have to make sure that you spend at least as much time building the team, hiring and retaining as you do acting as an individual contributor, right? So
get the right people around you.
Yeah, right people, and you got to keep the right people around you. You've always got to make sure you're constantly recruiting A+ talent. Yep. The team has to evolve when you go from 35 people to 350 people to, in our case, more than 1,000 people. And I'm sure there'll be a day when we have 10,000 people. And often entrepreneurs make the mistake of not realizing that the team has to evolve first if you want to move the business forward. So you've got to forward invest in the team, right? You need to have the team that will get you to the next level, not a team that will hold you back from reaching the next level.
I would say the correlator to that is got to be you got to recognize where you may not have your strengths and putting people around you that amplify your weaknesses? Or what you're not good at? What you're not good at?
Augment, not amplify the weakness, probably.
Did I say I did. Thank you for correcting me. But thank you. That's that quantum, the lack of a quantum.
Well, it's a two states, Troy, so it can be both amplifying and augmenting at the same time. That's absolutely the case. The other thing you have to be careful as an entrepreneur is speed. Speed matters, right? So time matters. I'm always focused at IonQ on moving things, as I like to say, to the left on the roadmap, which to me is, of course, accelerating and moving things earlier. And time's super duper important in a competitive world, right? Many people with academic backgrounds don't always appreciate that to the extent that they need to. So if you are a professor or you're a lab spinoff or you're a postdoc who's starting a business, just remember that time to market is everything. And a year really matters. Saying it's a solvable problem, and it doesn't matter if it's 3 years or 5 years, that's not true. It always matters. Time always matters. And then the third thing I would say is entrepreneurs like to move quickly. We like to create, and we're very focused at IonQ on creating new opportunities. We're a revenue up business, if you will, as opposed to a let's try and squeeze costs and find an extra point of margin, because it's a growth stage business, hyper growth stage business. But I've learned throughout my career that sometimes you have to slow down to speed up, Amen. As the expression goes, and you've got to bring people along with you. And so that's been a constant development area of mine.
Would you agree that, and I'll try not to get in the wrong state, is it's so many entrepreneurs want to create but not build? And to your point of building the team, you got to have a team that's going to help you build something, because some entrepreneurs are willing to, they love starting the stuff, but to build it is a different skill set, a different part of the brain.
No, I think that's right. And that's been a challenge for IonQ in the last decade. Going from dozens of people to hundreds to thousands means that we've gone from, you guys all know that joke that the Roman army was designed around centurions, because you can remember about 100 people's names and faces. 100, 130, whatever it is. Once you get over that level, all of a sudden you're kind of a big company, right? Where you're traveling around the world. In our case, we have a dozen offices. You don't know everyone's names and face. And so that ambassadorial or diplomat, component of your job, certainly kicks in. And it doesn't ever unwind as you get bigger, right? But look, certainly it's an exciting journey, and I echo what President Pine said, that I hope there's 10 more, if not 100 more, IonQs in the audience here. This has been a fantastic ecosystem for us. We're very grateful for the support of both the governor and, of course, President Pines and the university. We wouldn't have gotten our start without it. Yep. We are based, walking distance from here. We continue to invest in this ecosystem. And one of the things that I'm keen to sort of market a little bit in today's session with you, Troy, is this quantum revolution is here today, but it's here today in the sense that the hardware is ready. What we're working on that we need everyone's help on at the university and in Maryland ecosystem is the application and the software ecosystem.
Well, that's the great segue to my next question is, talking to these entrepreneurs that are here and these innovators that are here, what are some of those entrepreneurial opportunities that they should be looking at and pursuing?
Yeah, so people find it easy to think about the hardware in a computing revolution in general, but actually most of the value that's captured and created comes in the software, right? And so, quantum computing is interesting, and same with networking and sensing, in the sense that it's esoteric, it's new. There are startups. There's always an ecosystem of people trying to catch up or ride on the coattails of an NVIDIA or an Intel, or we believe IonQ is very much the NVIDIA of the quantum space. But if you're starting something or you want to do something with a high probability of capturing, creating value, and playing the game where the puck is going, where the ball is going, you very much should be creating a business, to find a vertical or more than one vertical where you can create applications that run on our brand new latest generation systems and are actually able to do useful things right now in finance or defense or logistics or pharmaceuticals or material science or sustainability. I mean, we have an application roadmap we published on June 9th that takes us from today through 2030, gives you examples of the kind of things we can do. Just the tip of the iceberg, right? The majority of the value that comes in computer revolutions is from applications that are created that no one thinks about ahead of time.
I love it.
And that's where I would spend our time, energy, money, and IonQ is a massive friend of any entrepreneur not just in this ecosystem, but beyond, who wants to do that with us.
So that sounds like that unicorn opportunity. There you go. So look, as we close, first of all, thank you for being here today. I know it's your time, and thank you for what you're doing for Maryland, for University of Maryland College Park. Closing, again, recognize that you're a public company, so there's limits to what you can and cannot say, but what does that future look like for IonQ? What's that 3 to 5 year vision that you've obviously been public, that you can talk to us about, and how that folds into what we're talking about here today with our entrepreneurs?
Yeah, so I appreciate your point on being public. I won't be telling you about our earnings call on November 5th. That's true. The reality is, look, we've doubled revenue every year since our IPO, and we've actually hit or exceeded every technical milestone we set ourselves and every financial milestone we set ourselves. And that's very important for credibility. And by the way, I recommend that highly as an entrepreneur. Even when you're private, you want to be meeting and beating. And so our vision into the future is, we've said in January this year we want to be $1 billion revenue business by 2030. We've said that we want to continue to be the 800-pound gorilla of the business of quantum in its totality: computing, networking, sensing, security, on the ground, in space. We want to be that first $100 billion market cap quantum company, and I hope we're going to be that $1 trillion market cap company. May not be in 3 years, but maybe 5. You never know. Yeah. We are driving, of course, growth and expansion in the broader ecosystem and workforce of quantum. Imagine how few people knew about quantum computing even 5 years ago to our IPO versus today. All right, probably a factor of 10 increase in the quantum, let's just say, labor force. And I think it'll be another factor of 10.
Wow.
In the coming, certainly 5 years, but maybe even 5 quarters. And so this is an inflection point. I encourage the university, everyone associated with the university, and everyone, frankly, in the state to grab it with both hands. IonQ will continue to grow on this campus with this ecosystem, with this group. And you should think about quantum computing not as a scary thing that you don't understand, but just remember that almost everyone in the room probably doesn't know how an NVIDIA Blackwell chip works. You don't need to know how a QPU from IonQ works. What you need to know is how to build applications on top of it. Yep. So please do that and help us make this ecosystem the revolution the University of Maryland and Maryland deserve.
Niccolo, thank you.